Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Today on the show, we welcome Executive Chef Sabrina Tinsley from La Spiga, an Italian restaurant. Sabrina will take us on a whirlwind adventure that begins in Alaska and leads us through Europe and back to Seattle, Washington, where she built a life with Pietro Berg and opened La Spiga, a famous and top Italian restaurant in Seattle, Washington. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here today.
It's an honor to be here.
You have a fascinating life. You shared a lot of stories with me, and I know that our listeners would love to hear a few of them. I thought that I would start with moving into your past and talking a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up. Can you share a little bit about that?
I'd love to. I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, mostly. I was born in Ketchikan in the southeast, and I was probably 3 or 4 when we moved to Fairbanks. I grew up kind of wild. Like I had 2 sisters and a brother, and we were always outdoors getting into some kind of mischief or other. It was quite a wild upbringing, I should say.
I love that.
You know, I grew up, my dad was a doctor there. He's really an outdoorsman. And he saw like dog sledding when we first moved there. He saw people dog sledding and he said, I want to do that. And so he started to collect dogs, if you could say collect dogs. He started to buy some dogs, and he and I learned how to dog sled together. And it wasn't my passion necessarily, but he dragged me into it. He dragged all of us into it. And I grew up racing sled dogs.
Wow. Okay. Racing sled dogs. I think back to Jack London and Call the Wild. That is so interesting. What a picture.
Yeah, it's quite a sport. You have to really take care of your dogs and feed them well, train them. And I remember my dad getting me up super early in the morning before school to run the dogs and train them and get them ready for the races.
I can't imagine how cold it must have been when you were doing that.
Yeah, it was very cold. So as you know, in Alaska, it can get sub-zero. It's sub-zero most of the winters. Racing dogs through that cold weather, you have to bundle up, and even so, my earlobes would often get frostbite.
So racing sled dogs. What about, I think you told me something about fishing too. Did you do a lot of that?
Yeah, so my dad was an avid fisher. He grew up fishing, and he would take us out fishing. We fished for salmon. We fished for halibut. We fished for pike. He also was a pilot, and so he flew us up to the Minto Flats north of us and would land in the marsh waters, and we would fish for pike, huge northern pike. That was probably one of my favorite experiences. But even lake fishing, we would do trout fishing. You know, the Dolly Varden. It was it was a lot of fly fishing and casting. So it was.
Oh, wait a minute. Fly fishing. I taught myself to fly fish when I was 8, and then I taught my wife right before we got married. So that has a real that drives really deep into my soul, and that's amazing. I know about all the fish you're talking about too.
I love it. So now I've just recently started teaching my son how to fly fish. He enjoys it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you're passing it on.
Yes.
Does he also enjoy cooking?
Yes. Well, enjoy it. I do make both of my kids cook with me. I don't,
Ah,
you know,
okay.
if every once in a while I'll be like, okay, you're completely responsible for dinner. I'm going to be home really late. You cook dinner. And then, I just make sure they have everything they need. They do really well, both my kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So Alaska, and then what happened after Alaska?
So from Alaska, when my parents split up, I moved back to Michigan. My mom is from Michigan. Both my parents are from the Midwest. My dad's from Illinois. I moved back with one of my sisters and my brother with my mom. We drove back cross country, moved to Flint, Michigan because my grandfather wasn't doing so well. And so my mom wanted to be there with him to help him since my grandmother had recently passed. And
I'm sorry.
I finished high school in Flint, Michigan, so my junior and senior year there. And then I went to Michigan State University from there.
What did you study at Michigan State?
I ended up studying elementary education. I originally thought that I was going to get into the hotel restaurant management program that they have there. It's a really good program. But unfortunately, I was having a little bit too much fun in college and I failed my trigonometry class. And even though I got a 4.0 the second time around, they still
Uh-huh.
did not accept me into the hotel restaurants school. So I ended up falling back on elementary education, which I thought would allow me the summers to really develop my full passion, which I was soon understanding was more in the food business.
So that was kind of the conflict, it sounds like, where you're kind of making that choice in your career.
Yes. So I was going to school for elementary education, but the whole time, all I could think about was food, eating food, cooking food, serving food to people. We went back to our family home in the summers between college, and I wanted to open a bed and breakfast. It was our home
Oh,
was vacant at the time. And so I decided I wanted to try it out for myself, and I packed up my siblings, my sister, my brother, my cousin, and um, uh, a woman who was traveling. She was actually riding her bike across country, and she had an accident just outside of Michigan. And so she wasn't able to continue her journey for a while. She had to heal. And so she hitched a ride with us up to Alaska, and we opened the bed and breakfast, and we served all kinds of breads for breakfast and fruit, eggs, and it was a fun experience. And the whole summer I had an opportunity to just experiment and cook all different kinds. And so I think that's where I really dove deep into my studies. And the whole time I was there, I will mention, the whole time, all summer, I was dreaming of going to culinary school. It just never happened.
what happened next?
So after I graduated from college, I had some French language credits to finish up because I did minor in French.
Oh,
I arranged to finish those credits in France, in Tours, France. It was 3 classes. That was really exciting to me because as an Alaska girl, I grew up really with a strong desire to travel. I think all people in Alaska need to just get out every once in a while. And so there's
yeah.
a longing, just this longing to go somewhere else. And so I grew up with this strong desire to travel, and going to France for the first time was very, very exciting for me. I finished my college credits there in the summer, and I was looking for a job in France actually because I wanted to really internalize the language. I had studied it all through high school and college, but it's not the same when you learn it scholastically than just, actually being in a country where you're forced to speak it. So I really wanted to stay in France and finish and just really hone the language. And so my whole plan was to tour around Europe, learning the different languages, studying the different cultures, and eating the different foods from each different country.
You were really immersed in the French culture, the food, and the people, it sounds like.
Yes, it was a college town, so there were a lot of Americans around. So it
Okay.
was a little bit challenging to force myself to speak the language just because there were so many Americans around. That's why I thought I wanted to stay in France a little bit longer. But the first job I ended up finding was in Salzburg, Austria.
Oh, I see. What was the food like? So if I'm in Seattle or I'm somewhere in the US and I'm listening right now, what was the food like in Europe, in France and other places?
You know, I was really struck by how fresh everything was.
Hmm.
I was also struck by the artisan nature of the product. There was no detail taken for granted, let me put it that way. There was very special care taken for when you go to the pastry shop and all the pastries beautifully displayed and not like piled into the window. It's just very neatly organized. And they would take the pastry that you order, put it in the nice little package, tie it up, even the way they packaged everything. They took such great care. And that really struck me because here it's more like throw the donut in the bag, here's your bag. It's different.
I've been to
Yeah.
Europe. I have to agree with you. The freshness, the care, the passion that goes
Hmm.
into the food there is just it's indescribable.
Yes, so that really struck me. And then the flavors too were always spot on. So you would look at a pastry or a baguette or the couscous salad, you would think how beautiful. And then the flavor would match the beauty, the visual beauty. Imagine how it would look just or taste just by looking at it, and you would never be disappointed. When I look at a cream donut here or something in the United States, have a certain vision and I'm often disappointed. It's hard to describe.
And then in Salzburg, what happened there?
So in Salzburg, I was working at an international boarding school. I was the librarian, I was the English teacher for the kindergarten, and I was a resident assistant. I was just experiencing the culture of Salzburg and enjoying my job. And Salzburg is beautiful, it's a magical city. And I explored often and sat in the cafes and, just took in the beauty and the magic of Salzburg. One evening, I was on my way back to the international boarding school. I had to take a bus back to the school. The bus only comes once every hour. And so I was sitting in a cafe waiting for my bus. And it was in October and it was very cold outside, and I was sitting by the door and the cafe was packed. And this was Cafe Getreidegasse, which is right on the main strip of the Altstadt. And I, I was quite chilly and I had just ordered my cake and my coffee, and I asked the waitress if there was a seat close to the back. So she I did hear some commotion at the door, and I'm just like, okay, whatever's going on at the door, it doesn't matter. I'm reading my book. I asked the waitress if there was, a seat available closer to the back, and she said actually one just opened up, so you can, head on back and I'll bring your coffee and cake to the back. As it turns out, the only seat that was available was a seat right by that noisy uh, Italian guys that came into the door while I was just sitting and waiting for my coffee. I heard somebody talking to me in Italian, and I'm just like, ich spreche kein Italianisch, which means I don't speak Italian in German. And then I heard a voice in English. He said, "We're really glad you came to sit by us." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I understand that language." And I'm like, I smiled, whatever. And then he said, "Can I come and join you at your table?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And so we talked. It was Pietro, of course, and we
Of
talked
course.
we were talking for quite a while as I noticed, and then I looked at my watch and I noticed that I missed my bus. So I had a whole nother hour to kill. He said, well, why don't you show me the city? And so we walked around the city and talked and really hit it off. It was great conversation. I missed another bus and another bus.
Oh my gosh.
And it felt good. It was really, it just seemed natural.
Uh-huh. Natural to miss 3 buses?
Natural to natural. That was actually, I was always, every time I missed the bus, I'm just like, oh well, I guess we have another hour to spend. And it was natural. The conversation was natural. We hit it off. Just felt, it felt comfortable. It wasn't forced. He made me feel safe. He didn't think, it didn't seem like there were any ulterior motives or he was in a rush. Anyway, calm, felt good.
Wow. That's such a special story. And that all happened in Salzburg.
Yes, that all happened in Salzburg. Yeah. And I don't know if you want to hear the rest of my side of the story, how we connected.
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Of course.
All right. So, said, well, listen, told him that I was going to be down in Venice, on a school trip. And so he said, well, if you have a chance, you should come and visit me in my hometown. I would love to host you and show you around my city. I said, that would be great. And he gave me his address. So I said, okay, great. I'll write and, we'll connect. I might have waited a week or two, because I had a month before I came down to Italy. Finally sent him a letter and I gave him all the details when we were going to be there. And I never heard back from him. So I was just like, oh, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. I had just come back to the school, the international boarding school, because the kindergarten was in a different place. So I came back the day before we were going to leave to go to Venice. And as I parked the van, I hear my name over the intercom. I'm just like, phone call for Sabrina Tinsley. And so I went and got, picked up the phone, and it was Pietro. The first thing he said to me, because I had been to the club the night before and my voice was kind of hoarse. The first thing he said was, what happened to your voice? And that just kind of tickled me. I'm just like, that's funny. He essentially gave me all of the, all the details, the train that I would need to take from Venice to get down to Bologna. And he was going to pick me up at the station in Bologna. I spent the weekend with him and had a ball. It was so fun. We ate so much food. We went to the discotheques at night, and I really connected with his friends as well. Everybody was very open and very welcoming. And his friend was graduating from college, and he was going to have a party the next weekend. So he's like, come back next weekend. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm coming back. And so I went back the next weekend and again had a wonderful time. And Pietro's quite a charmer. I don't know if you know that about him, but he's quite a charmer.
I sensed it. Yeah, I sensed it.
And so after the second weekend, I already knew that I wanted to be with him. I felt like I wanted to make a life with him. So I told him, I think he got cold feet. He's just like, oh, but anyway, so then, I pretty much went back every weekend. I was living in Salzburg for about a year, and I went back almost every weekend, except for a couple weekends he came to visit me in Salzburg, and that was always a lot of fun as well. And then after a year, I decided that I wanted to move down. I mean, we both agreed that, the back and forth was rough. So I moved down with him after a year.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You don't know what to make for dinner again? You want to explore new cuisines, but you don't have time? What if you have new inspirations and we provide you with the ingredients and recipes? We know you want to travel, learn new foods, explore the world, but life's responsibilities keep getting in your way. What if you can bring those experiences to your home neatly packed into a box? Ladybug Collective is a subscription service that finds real people from around the world to create beautifully curated assortments of recipes, ingredients, and cultural content. Not only do we include cultural ingredients, but also a set of detailed recipe cards with instructions on how to use them. Each box also has a QR code that when scanned takes you to tons more global exploration to immerse yourself in. Everything from film to lifestyle, art to history, it all can be found here. Live your life to the fullest. Subscribe now and don't miss out on the next cultural adventure. Ladybug Collective. Always exploring.
Yeah, that is such an amazing story. I'm traveling in my mind right now and thinking about the sacrifices that both of you made to be together. And, love is so precious. I love my wife. We've been married a long time, and every day is special. And it's just, but sometimes you have to make those sacrifices.
Right.
So then it sounds like things kind of moved along, and you were starting to become a chef. You were already there. I know how passionate you are about food, and I hear it along the journey.
Yeah. So I ended up living in Italy with Pietro. We got married, and I lived there for 5 years with him. We had a couple of businesses together while we were there, but most importantly, we did a lot of traveling because he had to travel for his job. And so I would tag along since I wasn't working in the very beginning. And I got to see a lot of Italy, and I got to experience the diversity, the different cuisines from city to city. And as I was learning Italian as well, I got to be able to hear the different dialects, the accents from region to region. Whenever I tasted something that I liked, I would always try to bring it home and recreate it at home. In fact, Pietro gained a lot of weight in the first couple of years that we were married because I was cooking all the time and experimenting all the time. And I would buy cooking magazines and cookbooks, and I would, experiment with, all the kind of newer type of cuisines. But then I would also talk to all the aunties and the moms and really get their take on the traditional foods from the region. And I would, write everything down and kind of experiment with what I've been told, maybe the same recipe by several different, moms and nonnas, and kind of then experiment with my own, like kind of alter it just a little bit to my own personal taste. Same with piadina. So piadina romagnola, that's the flatbread that we make now. So in Romagna, everybody talks about exporting piadina romagnola and making it big, in another country or another area of Italy even. It's kind of like a big deal to do piadina outside of the region. We decided that that's what we wanted to do. So we opened up a piadina shop in Macerata, which is outside of the Piadina region in Le Marche. And I gathered all the recipes that I'd collected through the years. And I actually spent some time with a young woman named Francesca, who was running a Piadina kiosk in Cesena, which is Pietro's hometown. And she taught me everything that I needed to know about running a Piadina shop. I spent probably a good week with her and was able to experiment with the dough and so on. With her dough, with her recipe, and rolling out the piadina, making caccione, which is the stuffed version. When we decided to open our piadina shop, everything just came to me. I did probably a couple weeks of experimentation with all the different recipes that I had and came up with my specific formula for piadina romagnola. We were highly successful. There was nothing like it in the city. We were very close to the university. And so for lunchtime, we were packed full. There was a line out the door. And we sold piadinas stuffed with all different type of Italian cured meats and cheeses and vegetables and all different kinds of crescioni, which is the stuffed version. So with tomato, mozzarella, mushrooms and ham. That's a classic. Or with the greens and the sausage and the pecorino cheese. That's another classic, with potatoes and squash, butternut squash. So it was a lot of fun. We were very successful.
Now, right now it's almost lunchtime and my stomach is going crazy, right?
Oh my gosh, it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What you're describing for me and for our listeners, I'm sure they're starving and they want to just break down the doors and come to your restaurant.
Yes. So the original idea of La Spiga was to do like a recreation of that piadina shop. So just do a vast number of stuffed piadinas and stuffed crescioni, just all different type of flavors. But it quickly pivoted.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sabrina, I understand you were selected for the James Beard Foundation program.
I was selected to participate in the James Beard WELL program, which is the Women's Entrepreneurial and Leadership Program. That was for us, it was about an 8-week program. More than that, it was extended because I took it last year, 2020, during the pandemic. So for the first time ever, it was an online program. So they extended it. We met once a week, and it gave me some great insight into my own business. I was always, I'm a self-trained chef and entrepreneur, so I learned everything just by instinct. And so it was really a great program for me. It was very validating, and it helped me understand how I can actually take control of my business and grow with it. So it gave me a lot of inspiration, and I met some wonderful colleagues that across the country that we're still in touch, and we still do programs together as well. So it was very inspirational for me.
Wow. And I remember when I first reached out to you and Pietro, I saw a lot on Facebook and social media about Field to Table. How are you selected to be part of Field to Table? There were only a few chefs there.
Yeah, so Field to Table was put on by an organization called Sound Excursions. And when when COVID hit, their pivot project was a program called Chef Box Live. So Sound Excursion typically does events with, 10,000, 15,000 people. So they're used to orchestrating large scale events. And Field to Table was their first opportunity to do a larger scale event during the pandemic. So they created an outdoor dining room. Excuse me. They created an outdoor dining room and invited chefs from all over the city to participate. I was selected because I've worked with them in the past for the Chef Box Live program, and they asked me if I wanted to participate, and I said absolutely. It was definitely within my wheelhouse. I've done several caterings before, so this was similar to doing a catering.
And how many chefs were actually participating?
I would say there were probably 12 different chefs, and that's just off the top of my head. That's not a concern.
I thought it was 12 too, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. But how many do you think applied or were in the process?
I couldn't answer that question. I would say, you know, everybody's kind of in a different place. Some people that would have done this event pre-pandemic might not have been in a position to do it. I did ask a friend of mine if he wanted to participate, and he unfortunately had to close his restaurant. And he does caterings, and so he was half interested. But when I told him it was for 200 covers, 200 plus covers per night, he declined because he was looking for caterings more in the 30-person range. I think they were, looking for chefs that were willing to do it, and chefs that could pull it off, and chefs that could draw some interest from the public, that could make the program a success.
I had a friend that attended and she really enjoyed it. So we're going to move on to part of our show I call Let's Get Cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And want to really deep dive and talk about a little bit more about food and your passion around that. Are there multiple Italian cuisines that you specialize in, or is there just specific from the region?
I would say I'm specialized in the cuisine from Emilia-Romagna, but I really do experiment with foods from other regions as well. And I will present them at the restaurant, but always specifying that it's from a different region. Since La Spiga is based on Emilia-Romagna, we want to make that distinction.
Okay. It's interesting. We call back to Alaska and your roots. I'm fascinated by what you said about travel and how you hungered for travel. And you've been all over the world. Is there any special place in the world that you would want to go back to?
We spent some time in South America, and I would love to explore South America more, but I've never been to Asia, anywhere in Asia, and it's calling me. I need to get there. Japan, Indonesia, Singapore, that whole, that whole continent is worth exploring. So I really do still have a lot of traveling to do.
Well, since you mentioned Japan, I'm just going to circle back, but I think you were in a competition called the Iron Chef with Bobby Flay. And can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. I had a lot of fun with it. We got to go to New York. That's where it was filmed, and I took two of my line cooks with me, and we enjoyed the city, but also had a wonderful time on the set. It was very interesting to see the program from the production standpoint. I had always watched even the Japanese version. Um, I loved Iron Chef, the original. I received a phone call one morning, and it was Iron Chef America, and they had asked me if I wanted to participate, and of course I accepted. But the experience overall it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I don't feel like being on Iron Chef defines me as a chef. It
Sure.
was a fun moment in my career, but I don't feel like it defines me as a chef. I probably didn't leverage it as much as I could have, because I know other people love to hear about that.
You just helped me ask the perfect question. What do you think defines you as a chef?
Probably the fact that I'm a staunch traditionalist, and I really want to represent the Italian cuisine in the way that I experienced it when I was living in Italy. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, the food is so perfectly balanced, that I really wanted to let the food speak for itself. I think my palate is pretty refined. My mother was a wonderful cook, so growing up, I had a lot of different experiences and or food experiences with her. She cooked from all over the globe, and I think that helped define my palate. Plus, she grew a garden and so on. So the foods that we ate were always very fresh and clean, very connected to the earth, very much so. And as I taste other people's food and so on, I'm trying to understand what makes La Spiga's food stand apart. And I think that's just it, just fresh, clean flavors, not too
Okay.
many additives.
Wonderful. One other question about chefs. Are there any chefs that you admire?
Oh, sure, there are plenty. I'm not gonna say. I mean, I would say Massimo Bottura, but Pietro already took that one. But
He
I was
did. Oh, yeah.
like the first time that we went to his cafe and he actually came
Oh,
into the restaurant. For the first time ever, I was
oh my
starstruck.
gosh.
And it was
Uh-huh.
Pietro couldn't believe my reaction. I'm just like I couldn't even believe my reaction. I'm just like, why, but
Wow.
it's just because he's been able to take specifically Emilia Romagna, but
Mhm.
more specifically Emilia, and just elevate it to the status of, best restaurant in the world. Italian restaurants, even though I think the food is superior to many other cuisines,
Mhm.
it tends to be more humble and doesn't get quite that recognition. And so to me, that just meant a lot. Locally, I really do admire Renee Erickson and her restaurant group. Just think that she's able to implement her ideas the way I would love to be able to implement all the million ideas I have in my mind. It's not easy to be able to create such a successful group of restaurants, write cookbooks, and be able to do it all. So closer to
Yeah.
home, I really admire her. Melissa Miranda has done a fabulous job with her restaurant, Musang. Her path to success is just really intriguing to me. Just starting out as a pop up in Jerry Corso's Bar del Corso.
And then one other thing related to that, I know that you do some mentoring. Can you tell us a little bit about being a chef, an executive chef, and mentoring other people?
I learned the trade on my own. I learned my craft pretty much on my own. I mean, I had a good start again, growing up cooking, growing up, eating, from our family garden and so on. I had a good base knowledge of food and cooking and so on. But I basically learned on my own. So I know what it means to come into a kitchen and know nothing, about how an actual professional kitchen is run. And so it comes naturally to me to be able to work with people who are just at the beginning stages of their career, who think that they want to get into cooking, but don't really know. Because I can take it from the very basic level. I still remember what it was like. I really enjoy being an inspiration. And whenever I can invite somebody into my kitchen, if I have time, I'm always willing to put in the work because we always need good people in this industry. It starts from, somebody who has a passion for it. And if I can cultivate that passion in the right way, I think it could add to the overall talent pool in the city. And I particularly think it's important to bring along people of color, particularly women of color. I see myself reflected mostly in people of color since I am a woman of color. As much as I can, I want to be able to help, people along. I've been able, I mean, it's been a 23-year journey, but I feel like I have this platform now and I'm in a position where I can help as many people as I can. And so whenever I have a moment, I'm open to it.
Lastly, about jumping back to cooking, can you describe your favorite or a couple of your favorite dishes at La Spiga for us?
A couple of my favorite dishes that we're serving right now.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. All right, so I'm going to describe a couple of the pasta dishes that I love the most. Right now, we are serving tortelli agli asparagi, which is tortelli. It's like a ravioli, essentially, that's filled with asparagus filling. So it's asparagus, ricotta parmigiano, tossed with lemon butter, sprinkled with some calendula petals from my garden. It's an iconic spring dish, in my opinion. Just with the asparagus, and the flavors are just so perfect together. The pasta actually gets tossed with pecorino cheese, pecorino romano, and flavor really complements the asparagus well. The other dish that we're not currently serving, but it was on just the past menu, was tagliolini al cinghiale, which is wild boar. So it's a wild boar
Oh,
ragu
wow.
with, yeah, just a little bit of tomato. It's not super tomatoey because I think the tomato could overpower the boar.
Hmm.
But it's braised boar that's then kind of, I don't want to say shredded, but it is, just kind of broken up a little bit. So it's not ground boar, which could be a little bit more dry. It's topped with some fresh minced celery leaf, and it just goes perfectly all together. It's delicious. And the tagliolini is made with chestnut flour, which gives kind of a sweet element to it.
Those all sound delicious. As we wrap up, is there any dessert that's your favorite? I call it the desert island dessert.
Hmm.
A dessert either in your restaurant or anywhere in the world.
I'm gonna have to go with the crostata limone. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And
Okay.
especially if I'm on a desert island, I want something a little bit more refreshing, not too heavy. The lemon tart is perfect because it has the lemon curd, which is very tart, but it has the right amount of sweetness to satisfy your soul.
Wonderful. And I know that when we first started today, we ran a little bit late because you actually got locked in the bathroom. And it happens. It's happened to me. I remember these things happen and we look back at them and we laugh at them. So looking back, are there any kitchen disasters that you remember that you could share with us?
Oh, there are plenty of kitchen disasters, and most of them, when I have anxiety, I dream about, I have like nightmares about being able to serve my customers food in a timely manner, like quality food in a timely manner. And La Spiga is really big. So as you can imagine, we can be serving anywhere from, upwards of 100 covers at any one time. And so it can get really, really busy and intense. And if you're not on point, then, then things can go south really, really quickly. And I think the biggest kitchen disasters are happen when when we have a new staff and a very, very busy Saturday night. And so every once in a while, it doesn't happen so much anymore because I have solid staff that's been with me for a very long time. In the past, the biggest kitchen disasters have happened with new staff, little training, somebody calls out sick, and we're forced to work with a skeleton crew with a green staff. I've had one time I was training somebody during one of these busy times. We have a pasta cooker that it tends to, the water is supposed to fill automatically. And it
Okay.
doesn't always fill automatically because the electrical probes don't always sense the water level. We had many pasta tickets that we needed to get together. And I had to manually turn on the water, which is adding cold water to the pot, which lowers the temperature of the water. So not only did I cool the water down, but at some point it started overflowing. And so I had to drain some of the water out. And so I drained some of the water out. And just when I thought that I was closing it, I actually opened it even further because it was close it. You had to turn it the opposite direction. And so I
Okay.
thought I was closing it, and I actually opened all the water. I opened the drain, and all the water started draining out. Before I knew it, it was almost all gone. It was a struggle with, the getting the pasta well filled back up. We had to throw pots of water on the stove to try and get this
I
pasta
can
out as
imagine.
quickly as possible. It was a nightmare. Needless to say, we put a sign on the drain closure after that. Up is closed, down is open.
That could easily turn into a Saturday Night Live skit.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you got to
I
look
still,
back and laugh at it.
but that's one of those times that I can't laugh. I still can't laugh at. I was just
Yeah.
so like
Right.
shocked about making that huge mistake right in the middle of service, full board, all the water out of the pasta well. It was bad.
Well, we've taken a walk through your life. We've taken a deep dive, and it's been really, really special to learn about how you became a chef and how La Spiga was formed. I'm curious if you have any advice for our listeners if they're interested or really passionate about becoming a chef.
I think it is really important to try it out. Some people find a better path going to culinary school. Others find a better path just learning the trade first. Some people do a combination. They learn, they think they like it, and then they go to culinary school. So it doesn't really matter how you approach it, but if step number one is going to culinary school, you should definitely get some practical experience too. What you learn in school is not an actual experience, an actual cooking experience. It's I've spoken with many people who thought they wanted to go thought they wanted to be a chef, but then didn't realize how difficult it was and how stressful. And, for some, the rewards just, or the stress and the, difficult factors of being a chef, um, is like far greater than the rewards, so it's a balance for sure. Definitely get some practical experience to make sure that this is the field you want to be in. Also remember that there are all different types of jobs within the industry. Being the chef of a single standalone restaurant is not your thing. There's always, the corporate sector, so in here in Seattle, there's a lot of that as well. So explore, understand what the different opportunities are within the.
That is really good advice. And as we wrap up, do you have any special message for our audience about La Spiga, about anything that you want to share about the culinary community at large?
Let's see. I guess just going back to the fact that it's not an easy industry. Everybody in the industry knows that it's always a struggle, and you really put your whole heart and soul into the work, into your restaurant. Most of our customers are very graceful when they come to the restaurant, and they really appreciate what we're doing. I think that for us is the biggest reward, more than anything else. I mean, we've been here a long time. The thing that keeps us going is the positive support that we get from our customers and the positive feedback when people are happy with the experience. Or even when you're not happy with the experience, if you let us know in a meaningful way and give us the opportunity to improve, because we do listen to all types of feedback and we never think that we're doing everything perfectly. Important for people to know that, we're always wanting to improve and offer the best possible service. And
Mm-hmm.
any kind of feedback, good or bad, we appreciate, but mostly we appreciate it when it's direct directly toward us, not on Yelp, for example.
Right.
And if you write us a letter and we don't respond, I promise you we have heard your comments and we always strive to improve.
That is a great message. Well, Sabrina, on behalf of Voice for Chefs, I really want to thank you because I know how busy you are, and it took several months for us to coordinate this. And I just feel that you and Pietro are truly the voice for chefs in the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
And I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Voice for Chefs.